Hello and welcome to another episode of Teaching Heroes. I'm Dr. Jo Winchester and I'm here today talking to amazing Principal Helen Morgani, who is currently at Old Guildford West Public School. Helen, thank you so much for coming to my podcast.
Thank you, Joanna. I'd just like to clarify, there is a Guildford, an Old Guildford and a Guildford.
Oh, my internet.
Public school.
Oh, Guildford West, yes. My internet went a bit funny there for the moment, so that's all good. We heard you. So thank you for coming on. And Helen and I were just talking before we recorded that actually I feel like I know Helen really well, but Helen's done some amazing work with my sister and then we've connected a bit on Twitter. So it's amazing what social media does, I think, for connection in education.
Definitely. I think that I follow quite a few people in education and I've developed quite a big network. I was encouraged to do so probably about 3 days ago. He's retired now, my director, and he said, how do you know what the young'uns are doing if you're not out there on Twitter? And I joined for that reason. It probably took me about 5 years to join with a lot of encouragement, but I have made so many friends. I have learnt so many things, and it's a platform where you can share and learn and grow together as educators.
Yeah, it's really important. I find Twitter and LinkedIn, as you say, even schools, like I'm friends with school out in Kangaroo Valley and, some schools out west. And it's really important, I think, to keep your kind of teaching current and let's just see what else other people are doing out there because we're not all doing the same thing. So tell us about where your school now, what's the context, how long have you been there for, what's some of your visions and your plans for where you are now?
So I'm currently at Old Guildford Public School and this is my 3rd year at school. I was relieving 2 years prior, but this is my first permanent appointment. So it's quite exciting. And when I was looking to apply for a principal position, I had a criteria. And what I really wanted was a low socioeconomic school, high EALD, so students from non-English speaking backgrounds. And if it was out there, I wanted a high Arabic population. And I've hit that with all the criteria here at Old Guildford Public School. I think coming in, every principal has a moral purpose and what they believe are their values. And my values from the day that I walked in, I communicated them to staff and they're on my door. So I've got 3 core values and they are equity, integrity and excellence. In relation to my vision for the school, I think every principal comes into a school at a certain point and it can't be my vision because I always say to staff, it's not Helen Morgani Public School, it's Old Guildford Public School. And although I bring myself to the role, we're in the process now of creating a new school strategic improvement plan. And the vision is our vision because it's our plan. And that consultation for the vision and the direction of where we're going is built on analysis and looking at data and reflection, both from students, parents and teachers. It's nice to know that I can still see my vision reflected in the school's broader vision, and it's quite exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just reflecting on your 3 criteria, of having a school, what made you want those 3 things in a school?
Well, I think as an aspiring leader and as a leader, I was always asked that question.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know who you are and what you stand for, you'll fall for anything.
Yeah.
And it's quite important for me, and it took me a really long time to actually determine who I was. I always ask aspiring leaders now, who are you as a teacher and what do you stand for? Yeah. And then I ask them, who are you as a leader and what do you stand for? And then I get the blank look. I think coming into a school, you do know what you stand for, because I think that's what drives you intrinsically to do the work that you do. So in relation to equity, I've only worked in, and I love working in low socioeconomic schools that are quite disadvantaged, where you will find challenges on a daily basis in relation to student behaviour that stems from broken families or poverty or trauma. Excellence, I believe that I and our staff and our students can get better every year. It's not about perfection, but it's about that drive to want to know better and do better and get better. So I've spoken about excellence, equality, and integrity. And integrity is important to me. It's doing the right thing, even when nobody is looking, because as a principal, I will always be challenged. I will always be questioned. And I say to people, as long as I can go to bed every night and put my head on my pillow and have a clear conscience, that I've done the right thing by all stakeholders.
Integrity is just everything, isn't it? Like it's something I've become really present to, particularly in the last year, about really honouring your word and being very clear about when you slip on your word. And like it happens, right? Particularly when you're a leader, you've got so much to do. Sometime you are going to, forget something or not follow through on something. But if you can bring integrity and honouring your word to that and saying, okay, yes, this is when I'll fix that, and just be honest. It's just everything, and everything matters. Even, as you say, even when people aren't watching, what are you even bringing to your desk, or even in the morning and getting dressed, those simple things, bringing that level of integrity. It's amazing what that brings out in a leader.
Absolutely. And I think the hardest thing about being a principal is that not everybody will know why you make the decisions you make. There are some decisions that can be clear and transparent. That's easy. But it's other decisions that maybe are related to underperformance or really sensitive issues that you can't be very clear, but you know that you've done the right thing by everybody in making those decisions. At the end of the day, I've got it's just right behind me. I'll bring it.
Yeah.
On my desk, I've got this little board, and it says students at the centre.
Yeah, wow.
That's all it comes down to. I've got my students behind me here.
Yeah.
It's all about them. It's why I do what I do. Yeah. And I'm okay with feeling uncomfortable. I'm okay with being questioned or scrutinised or talked about. I say, what people say about me is none of my business, and it's not any of my business. But if I know that I've done the right thing by everybody, then I sleep well at night.
That's so incredible, though, really. You don't really see or hear of that in leadership that often, that real, stand for yourself and what you're, what you believe in. How did you come across, have you always had that, or how did you develop that skill of being okay with whatever anyone else thinks? That's what they think, but I feel, the decision I make is right, and how have you come to develop that? Because it's not an easy skill.
No, and when you look at a work around values, you are who you are as a person. Mm-hmm. And growing up, I've always been taught to tell the truth, not to lie, apologise when you've done a mistake. But I have been fortunate enough to work with exemplary leaders who have modelled what it means to have great integrity, particularly when you're in the line of fire. I'm thinking of a particular principal at the moment, and I said to her, I have had front row seats to your principalship from the minute you stepped in to the minute you exited the school, and I've seen it with the worst of times and the best of times. And what really stood out to me and what I really valued was watching her just keep going on the path with the message, regardless of what the challenge was. Her behaviour didn't change. You can only control your behaviour and what you do and what you say. You can't control other people, but you can control how you behave. And that's important to me. Yeah. That's important to me, that I feel okay within myself, that I'm doing right by myself, because if I don't, it doesn't sit well with me. I've got this internal dialogue and this internal mechanism that flashes at me. And that's, I think, who I am as a person. Yeah. And I think it's who I am and how I've been brought up, but also what's been modelled to me in my journey, and through other great leaders that I've had the privilege of working beside.
So what happens in those moments of wavering then, Helen, when the internal's a bit louder?
Yeah. I think when there's a bit of wavering, it happens because you actually might be scared to take the stand and to take the stance. And I think when you question yourself and you ask yourself, is it the right thing to do? because everybody wants to be liked and everybody wants to be accepted. And I think by the time you become a principal, you realise that you're becoming a principal not because you want to make extra friends or because you want to be popular or because you want to be liked. It's because you want to do right by your community. And doing right sometimes does go against what other people value or think I should do. So it's questioning myself. It's also questioning whether it's the right, have I done the right thing by that person? Have I been empathetic towards their needs? Have I thought about it from their perspective? I understand it might be challenging for them, but have I treated them with respect and dignity, although I'm taking that hard line? So we are human at the end of the day. There are times where if I get feedback, for example, recently there was a situation where my office staff didn't understand a decision that had been made at the school. And it wasn't until I was questioned by it that I realised that, a situation kind of happened and it kind of went out of, a little bit pear-shaped. And then in that situation, I reflected on myself. How did I contribute to that situation? And I apologised for not being as clear and transparent with them as I was with the parents and the rest of the staff. And they said to me, well, we're the office staff. We're not really involved in teaching and learning. And I said, but you are. You're the face of the school. And when inquiries are made, they're made via you. So I explained the why between the decision. And I said, I've communicated this to parents. I've had consultation. I've communicated this to staff. But I'm sorry that I didn't communicate it to you. So it's also owning and apologising. Not when I didn't feel that I'd slipped in my integrity, but I felt like I wasn't as open as I needed to be in order for them to also see where our school was going in the direction that we were heading in.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you can't. It wasn't a planned oversight, but rather, a learning, as you said. And if we can learn from those mistakes and recognise, oh, yeah, they did need to know that particular bit of information, then we can go about correcting it. I always tell my pre-service teachers to get in good with the office ladies. I said, they're everything. Yeah. And men, yeah. Yeah. I said, buy them a coffee. That's what I say. Yeah, it's just I think that level of integrity is so essential as well for those teachers that are starting out, because it is harder when you're not necessarily in a position of power to stay true to that, to stay true to your values, and also recognise that in your inexperience, you might not have access to the whole information about the why. So it's quite a delicate balance for those teachers starting out, do you think?
I do think that, but I've also, I think it starts with the principal at the top, but I have seen remarkable early career teachers where for them it might be, there's a discussion in the staff room and people are speaking negatively of students and community members quite openly. That is not okay. There's a code of conduct for all schools and for all teachers. And it's almost like the situation where there's the bully and then the person who looks and is the bystander. There are so many scenarios that happen every day in the lives of early career teachers where they can show integrity.
Yes.
It's one of their colleagues next door, teacher to teacher. They're having a negative conversation about an assistant principal. That's where they might not have all the pieces, but rather than jumping on the bandwagon and talking negatively about the assistant principal, you can say, I don't feel comfortable with this discussion. Why don't we go and speak to so-and-so so we can get some further clarity? Assuming best intentions in all situations puts you in a frame of mind where you're not making a judgment on a person or a scenario or a situation. And if you're curious enough to ask, because there's no harm in asking questions to the assistant principal or removing yourself from a situation where there is, gossip that's happening about students and parents. It's not okay. I think it's knowing as an early career teacher what's right and wrong, and you feel it in here. You feel it in your gut. And if you want students to be the best they can, however, you're willing to be in a school environment where you're not being the best you can, are you the best model for those students? So questioning yourself and thinking, just because you're not in a position of leader, I think the greatest leaders in our school are our classroom teachers, because they are at the grassroots and they lead our students every single day. They are in a privileged position and looking at that position as being a leadership position, because it is, you're a leader of 30 students. How are you showing up and how are you building your own integrity and professional stance? Because I always say to people, the worst behaviour you're willing to accept will become either the culture of the team or the standard in which people treat you by.
Yeah, and it's really, I just really loved what you said about, you know, what we model with each other in the staff room, you know, should be as high as expectation as what we expect of our students. And I think we sometimes brush over that a bit, and as teachers we forget that, you know, can we, you know, with integrity say in the classroom, you know, oh, we need to have healthy relationships with each other, and then not bring that ourselves into the staff room with our fellow colleagues. You know, it really is, and kids know, I think. They're very astute at picking up when a teacher is being sincere or has integrity in their teaching, I think.
Yeah. There are always going to be situations when we're going to be going below the line, and sometimes we go below the line because we're frustrated and we want to be heard.
Yeah.
Knowing when to pick yourself up above the line and do the right thing, but it's also knowing the right place and the right forum to have those discussions.
Yes.
I think any assistant principal or anyone supporting an early career teacher, and I think that's one of my passions, supporting early career teachers, where we can sit aside and I can say to them, like, tell me what frustrates you. Their frustrations are similar to frustrations that I had as a beginning teacher. I still have frustrations now as a principal, but it's knowing how to channel those frustrations into positive outcomes, solutions-focused outcomes that are going to have the best for you as a teacher and for your students and for your community.
Yeah, and being honest about those frustrations too, you know, can be, and it can be kind of difficult for an early career teacher to be quite honest about what they're struggling with, because you don't want to appear like you don't know, or so, you know, it does really take something to, you know, bring yourself to that level, I think, and as you say, it's okay if you slip, right? It's just about, well, how do you react to that slippage? Yeah. So Helen, let's go back. Why did you decide to become a teacher in the first place? Was it something you always wanted to do?
I think I wanted to be two things. So I either wanted to be a nurse or I wanted to be a teacher.
Yeah.
And I think that shows that I'm a people person and I'm a caring person. When I think about why I wanted to become a teacher, I think it is also stems from my own experiences in school. You know, my parents were born overseas, and when they migrated here, I was born here in Australia, but, you know, I was the child that started kindergarten with no English skills at all.
Yeah, right.
I was the child who probably didn't, you know, the family didn't have enough money to be able to provide all these extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
I was the child where by the time I started kindergarten, my parents were divorced.
Yeah.
So
right.
school for me was a place where I belonged. It was a place, it makes me teary because I was so lucky that at least I didn't move around. So I was in the same primary school for kindergarten to year 6, and the same high school from year 7 to year 12. And it was a place where I knew my teachers had high expectations of me. They were kind and they were nurturing. I was able to play PWSA sport. I was on, you know, the netball team. I was on softball and t-ball team. I was in choir. I was able to do at school what my parents couldn't afford for me to do at home.
Wow.
I think it's that wanting to give back, because now when I look at myself as a principal, when you think about why I want to work at a school like Old Guildford Public School, low SES, high EALD, predominantly Arabic, a school is more than just producing academic outcomes for students. I was looked at as a child, and at my school, we look at children and communities as a whole. So we're supporting students to improve student learning outcomes, but we're also supporting them socially, emotionally, financially, and every student who's in a disadvantaged situation as a parent who's in a disadvantaged situation. And the relationship we have with our parents and our community is just as important as it is with the relationship that we have with our students. I love that I can slip into Arabic and speak to our parents who don't have strong English skills. I also love that I can slip into Arabic to talk to my parent who has great English skills, but their child doesn't understand Arabic and they want to tell me something in confidence.
Right, sneaky. That's great.
You know, I love that I can give a mum who's having a hard time a hug and say to her, you're a good mum. And we love you and we love your child. And I'm here to work with you and I'm here to support you. Don't you worry about those 2 school shirts that you need for photo day. We're paying for it and I don't want to hear another word about it. Those are the things that make me want to do what I do. I love that the comment in our school is we're a private public school. The extracurricular activities that are available in addition to PWSA sport are things like coding, robotics, dance, drama, recorder, yoga, crochet, and these are all extra things that our teachers do in addition to their duties.
Wow.
In addition to their duties, before school and after school and during breaks, to give our community those opportunities, our students those opportunities to try something different. Photography, it just depends on the skill set of the teacher and what they bring. We've got an early career teacher who's in his 3rd year of teaching. Every year I get my teachers, my temps to put in an expression of interest. And one of them was a criteria around extracurricular. And he spoke about a vision about creating a boys OzTag team to align it to our school values in order to make them good sports on the field but off the field, so that we can manage that year 6 behaviour when children are just spitting the dummy because, you know, a game of soccer didn't go their way. So he's brought that to life this year and I've supported him in doing that. I said to him, come on, we've got to come up with a quirky name like Boys to Men or something. He hasn't quite gotten the name, but they're there, they're playing the game and they're also talking about how to be good sports on the field and off the field, so that we can touch in and check in a week from now when we come together every Friday morning.
Oh my gosh. I was just, the whole time you were talking, I just had goosebumps and tearing up because it's just so, I'm just loving this podcast so much because all I hear is just the gift that teachers are to their community. It's not about, no one has spoken about literacy, and I know that's important. It is, and we want our kids to read. It is, but what you are bringing to, you know, the students at Old Guildford and what your teachers are bringing is just like a universe bigger than that.
I mean, in addition to that, Jo, probably about 2 years ago, we did a little sort of research project with the Smith family, and our school was identified as being one of the most disadvantaged in the area that we're in. And when you look at the facilities and amenities around our school, they're pretty low and poor. And I had a vision at the time where my school would become a one-stop shop for allied health, because for the learning perspective, our school has a significant amount of students who have additional needs, but they're undiagnosed. And it's not because their parents don't care, it's because their parents don't know, or it's because they can't afford to take them to a paediatrician to actually get that diagnosis.
And the time, Helen, like my kids have struggled as well. We have the money. But I work, my husband works, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I forgot, I've got to make that appointment because a teacher's flagged this, and you know, I've got to take time off work to take them to that appointment. And you know, I always think, and I'm privileged, I have the capacity to do all this, and I struggle. Imagine single parents or parents who don't even, as you say, know anything about, you know, issues beyond, you know, what you like, very obvious, you know, there are very obvious disabilities and issues, and there are ones that are just tricky and I don't even know about them, and I'm in education, and I just think, oh my gosh, yeah, keep going about your allied health because that's amazing. Keep going.
Well, my vision was to become the eyes, the ears, the mouth, and the hand.
Oh my God. That's incredible. Oh my God. Wow.
Because they don't do it because they're not doing it because they don't care. They're not doing
That's right.
So we work with a wonderful provider and we pay a significant amount of money through school equity funding, but that's what our RAM is for. It is for schools to be able to make contextualised decisions for their communities.
Yeah.
And last year we had an occupational therapist, a speech pathologist and a psychologist 1 day a week, but we have a very tight process for early identification. So we actually have a preschool on site, and I think that is the most wonderful gift any school community can have. We're probably about one of 100 New South Wales department schools that has a preschool on site, because our occupational therapists and our speech pathologists screen every single child, and we have a system from K to 2 where we're recognising red students, amber students and green students. So if you think of that traffic light, you're red are you most at risk. And in preschool, what we want is, by that child is finishing preschool, we want to be able to get as much information as we can to put in an NDIS application for that child if they need that. And in order to put in a strong, robust NDIS application, you need a full speech pathology assessment, an occupational therapist assessment, and if there is something from the psychologist, great. We're helping to get to the bottom of what it is that the parents are probably seeing at home but aren't able to label, because what we want is to get that child intervention before they start kindergarten. And if they haven't quite believed us or they're not quite sold, we want by the end of kindergarten for that child to be at least diagnosed or getting the support that they need, so that they're not going to year 1 and year 2 with an undiagnosed or an unconfirmed or an they haven't even looked at it, disability. So we're wanting to do that, and it's been great. I think the hard part for us was just maintaining the psychologist. So we're looking at, maybe employing a behavioural therapist, but we're working with the company that we outsource in order to provide us a one-stop shop. It all happens here. I've got an assistant principal who coordinates that. Our parents know her, they value her, they respect her. There's back and forth communication happening all the time. But what we also want is, when this great therapy happens, that it's triangulated. We want the teachers, the parents and the school to all be on the same page, and we have the information here centrally at school, so that we can wrap around that child and provide that support as best we can to enable them to achieve their learning potential in literacy and numeracy.
Oh, wow. Is this something you came up with yourself? Because it's just such an incredible...
No, there are many schools. Yeah, there are many schools that do that. It's not unique to Old Guildford Public School. Schools do have different models in different ways.
Yeah.
For us, it's looking at a tier 3 level model of early identification, and analysis and diagnosis and support.
And I think, what I think about, just thinking about my own situation, is that, you have to, as a parent as well, shop around for not only the right allied health professional. So does my child need an OT? Do they need a psychologist? Do they need a speech therapist? Like, what do they need? But also who's good, right? Because, the field is vast, and you need to find the right person for your child. So it's not that therapist might not be better suited, and so if you're creating that in the school, that would give a whole lot of comfort to the parents to know that, well, this therapist is trusted by the school. They have, I know the challenges, in trying to coordinate the therapist with the school, and that's difficult. And if it's all in the one school, I mean, that adds just a huge peace of mind for parents.
And it does. That's what we want. And we want to be, that's what we're working towards. So we're quite happy with how things are going in that space.
Yeah, incredible. Wow. So let's go back to you. I'm just remembering, what do we say? So you had this amazing experience as a student yourself, and that, it came time to decide between a teacher and a nurse. What made you choose teaching?
Oh, you know what? I'm a principal now, but I've always been a child. Like, I look at myself as a child and now myself as a leader, and I've always had imposter syndrome. I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be a teacher. And at the time, the ATAR for nursing was a lot lower than it was for teaching. And I thought I'd only get into nursing. And I didn't only get into nursing. I had options. And I think what I wanted to do at the time was I picked the greater ATAR option for myself at the time. And I didn't actually go straight from my HSC, Joe. I didn't do that. I didn't go straight from HSC into tertiary education because culturally there was a path that was set for me. And the path was you get engaged, you get married, and you have babies. So I went down that path, and it wasn't until after having my second child that I realised that I want more for myself. My grandmother, I was raised by my grandparents because my parents were divorced, and both my grandmother and grandfather were illiterate in Arabic. They couldn't read and write Arabic, but my grandmother had the highest expectations on my sister and I, and she said, you need to go to university and you need to graduate because you don't know what life will throw at you, and that degree is a weapon in your hands. Go for it. She was so disappointed. Like, she wanted me to have the best of both worlds. And at that time, as an 18-year-old, I didn't think I could be a wife, a potential mother, and also a student. It was just too hard for me. So I worked, and it wasn't probably until about 5 years later, after having 2 kids, that I decided this isn't enough for me. And my goal when I went back to uni was to graduate. It was never to actually teach a day. I just wanted to graduate. I wanted that certificate.
Wow.
It took me 7.5 years, part-time work and having 2 more babies and building a home to finally graduate. And my goal was never to become a principal.
Yeah, right.
I just wanted to I just wanted to graduate. That was my first goal. And then when I went into my first teaching role, I just, I remember having a performance and development meeting with my principal, and she said to me, so what are your goals? Do you only just want to be a teacher? And then she apologised. She said, no, you're not just a teacher. Teachers are more than just teachers. But do you have any long-term goals? And I thought, no, I never want to be an assistant principal. I never want to be a principal. But I think this is the great thing about education. And for me personally, public education, because that child that came from the broken home, you didn't think that they would actually graduate school. But not only did they graduate school, they graduated from university. Yeah. And then the public system brings them in as an early career teacher and nurtures and grows them to become an aspiring leader, an assistant principal, and then a principal. And they didn't even want that. So I always feel like I don't necessarily, I guess, how did I get there? How am I in this position that I'm in today? But I always say to people, how Superman rips open his chest, and or Clark Kent and his Superman underneath. When I rip open mine says teacher. Yes. I joined the profession to become a principal. I'm privileged now to be a principal because my aha moment occurred when someone explained it to me as, when you're a teacher, you get to have influence over 30 students in your class. When you're an assistant principal, you get to have influence over all the grades in your stage that you're leading. And when you're a principal, you get to have influence over an entire community. And I think I've spoken about some of the influence that I'm able to have over an entire community, and that is an honour and a privilege, but it stems from being a great teacher.
Wow. Oh my gosh. What did your grandmother say when you got your degree? I'm sorry I'm making you cry, but you're making me cry.
She passed away before I graduated. But
I'm so sorry.
She saw my sister, who was younger than me, who didn't take the traditional path.
Yeah.
My sister graduated. My grandmother, who was just a hermit, she had 9 children, so she never had to leave the house because she could delegate her kids to do everything.
Yeah.
My sister's graduation was an event that my grandmother attended because she was so proud of her. She did know that I had gone back to study, so she was so proud of me for that, and she would take care of my kids, and she would support me and do everything she could.
Wow.
7.5 years is quite a while to graduate, but at least she passed away knowing that I was on the right trajectory to graduation.
Yeah. She would have seen it, Helen, I think. We really, the mentors we have in our life and the adult influences we have in our life, see more than what we see, I think. They've gone before and they can see where we're going. So I have no doubt your grandmother saw you in this where you are now and the influence that you have. And that was, I would say, part of her urging you to go back to school and back to study. But, you think, my teaching flipped, my aha moment was when I realised I was looking out at my lecture theatre of my 100 students and thinking, in 3 years, each of those are going to be teaching 30 kids. And then I realised, wow, if I can show up here with them every day and be the best I can be, then they'll be the best they can be for the 3,000 students or whatever that are out there. And, it's just we were really present to the impact of your leadership. And, I'm sure you must imagine the students at your school and the type of careers that they're going to have just because of that support of, giving a mother a hug, which is everything. Anyone who's a mother knows that somebody else telling you're a good mother is just amazing. And giving someone a shirt so they can show up is it's those big things. I mean, you must see that in your school. You must see the future laid out for your students just the way that your grandmother saw the future laid out for you.
I do, and that's what we want. We want to be able to give all of our students every single opportunity so that they can be the best they can. It's removing any barrier that we can at a school level, because there are already barriers and stereotypes around the students in my school, and it's hard enough.
Yeah.
And what we want is to reduce those barriers and to create opportunities to allow them to be the best that they can be in order to reach the best outcome that they can reach. And we're lucky that it doesn't just stop in primary schools. We've got wonderful high schools that our students go to, and that beautiful cycle continues.
Do you have a relationship with the high schools as well? Like, how much of a relationship is there between the primary and the high school?
So, when I arrived in 2019, I was just trying to keep my head above water as a principal because I was for a new region and network, and I just had to sort of operate, in my school. But prior to that, when I was relieving in another school, we had solid relationships established. Of course, 2020 we had COVID, so we're just starting that again. But it's vital. It's vital that primary schools and high schools know about what they're doing in each other's settings, that they have transition meetings for students, particularly your most vulnerable and at risk as they transition from one setting to another, that our students in Year 6 see familiar faces. So we've had high schools come and either do sport gala days or have open days or come in and do workshops at the primary school where our Year 6 students start to know and understand that. But also, one of the great things we did a few years ago in my previous school was you actually have to apply for high school applications in the first term or by the end of first term in Year 6. And our parents were shocked because they thought high school's a long way away. So we actually worked with the local high schools with our students when they were in Year 5 and their families in term 4 to give them the information then so they had enough time to process and ask questions before they have to do that process the following year in term 1. I've gone into local high schools and see the remarkable work that they do. Schools, when I've come from the sort of the Bankstown area, schools like Belmore Boys High School and Punchbowl Boys High School that just do remarkable things. And what I say to them when I walk in is, I can feel your school. And I would send my child here because I can feel it. I can feel it, and there's a feeling, and I've said to parents, because there's always, particularly around high school, there's a stigma or a stereotype, and I say to them, when you go to that school, you'll feel it in your heart as a mum, and they do. They just have to go there.
So true. It is the culture. Like, I know sometimes parents sometimes ask me for advice, and I always say go and visit it. And I say look beyond the principal as well, because it's about a kind of culture. You know, don't get too attached to any one teacher there, right? Because you can really like the principal, and then you don't know that they're going off somewhere else the next year. But you feel the culture, and a really good principal will leave that behind anyway. So I agree. It is about that sense of, and it's the students, I think, too. Like meet the students, meet the kids, and they'll tell you what the schools. You'll see it in them. They'll tell you what the school's like.
And Jo, you're so right about thing when you talk about culture, because the clubs that we offer, all the extracurricular before and after school clubs that our teachers passionately offer,
amazing.
That's the culture that was embedded in my school here before I arrived. So I take that off to the previous principal, and then the minute that I walked into the school, I felt it.
Yeah,
it doesn't happen overnight. You can feel it in the way the school hums and operates. You can feel it when you walk into the office. You can feel it in how you see teachers and students interact. And it's, I'm so fortunate that I work in a school where there are high expectations of students from both their parents and their teachers. And I just want to build on that culture of high expectations.
Yeah, 100%. So, Helen, there's lots of talk about public schools needing more money, which is no doubt. But what does it need to be spent on? Because I'm not sure whether always our ministers have it right. So if you were Education Minister, Helen, and I hope one day you are, to be honest, where does the money need to be spent? Where do we need to invest to transform education?
I really do believe that all schools are unique, and even the students on the road is different to my school.
Yeah.
I do believe that through knowing and understanding your context, but basing that on data and research, I do believe that every single school needs to make contextual decisions based on the needs of their students. We're in the process now of creating strategic improvement plans, and I've just actually finished working on where the money's going to go. There are priorities for literacy and numeracy, without a doubt. The professional learning that we do, having highly skilled deputy principal instructional leaders who know all about the research and don't have to deal with managing a stage team like an assistant principal does, but being able to, hire above establishment positions. But what I spoke about in relation to wellbeing, it's not actually part of our strategic improvement plan, but a school like mine, we can't not focus on wellbeing and spend money on upskilling our teachers, for example, in the Berry Street education model that we're all doing, to know how to support students from a trauma-based background.
Yeah.
I don't know that if there was a formula that would be a one-size-fits-all formula, I think that previous ministers for education would have applied that, but there isn't. Because schools are complex, students are complex, communities are complex, and we do want to focus on raising the educational outcomes of students and tapping into research-based pedagogies that we know will make an impact. But we also have to look at other things like wellbeing and other things to build capacity of teachers and staff, for example, coaching and mentoring. So I don't know that there's one particular way or one particular approach. And I think every school community, not just the principal, it's a collaborative approach with the executive team and teachers. We make decisions based on what we know for our school at this point in time. And the decisions that we're making in this particular school plan are different to the ones in the previous school plan, because we've moved slightly forward in certain areas, but in some areas we haven't, and it's a continuation of that. So,
and communities, particularly in Western Sydney, like when you think about development, and the communities have changed as well, the demographics have changed, facilities change, and that all has an impact on what you need to provide it as a school as well.
Absolutely. So when you talk to teachers who've been at my school for over 20 years, we had a significant refugee population where a lot of our students were newly arrived as refugees to Australia and to our school. We don't have that anymore. So students that are from non-English speaking backgrounds, their parents are like me. They're actually born in Australia. Their children probably don't speak fluent English, don't speak fluent Arabic or read or write Arabic. So we have a different demographic, and the way that our school operates, it can't operate in the same way that it did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So schools do shift and change, the demographic shifts and change, and how you're spending your money needs to be reflective, not of what was done in the past, but what the current data shows at this point in time. And it's great because plans are for 4 years. That might change again in 4 years, and you might have traction in areas, and then you get to re-establish where your plan is going in order to support your current student and teacher need.
Yeah, and I think schools are much more malleable than what we, really talk about. Because even in the discussions around teaching quality and around, what we do in universities assumes a kind of cookie cutter school in a way, that all schools are like this, so therefore we need teachers like this, and it's just doesn't fit with reality. You need different sort of teachers because there are different sort of schools in a way. Different challenges.
Another thing is, staff turnover, as you were saying at the beginning. Don't get caught up with a particular principal that you might like or a staff member. There's constant turnover in schools.
Yeah.
I've got a fantastic teaching team, but when I first arrived, we didn't have many teachers in their first 5 years of teaching. Now we have probably about 7. And it changes things considerably because they need support, they need mentoring, they need upskilling and professional learning. So, and it's great because they have a different lens, but they also need a different level of support. So schools are complex. Yes.
And amazing and wonderful. And I mean, I'm just so moved by everything you're doing, Helen, in your school, and, the amazing opportunities that your students have, the gift that the teachers are bringing their own skills to them willingly. So I just, thank you so much for who you are, for the students of the people of Old Guildford. Is just incredible. I've just enjoyed this so much, Ellen, and I hope we can talk again because I think there's so much more to talk about that you could share. But
and I hope my tears didn't take it back. It's for anyone who knows me and describes me, I think one of the words that they would use is passion and being passionate.
Yes.
And I think it's really hard when you're in education not to have a heart.
Yeah.
And I think, it all stems from here, and then you connect it with here in order to make that impact for the community. So thank you, Jo, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Helen. And we'll see you next week for another podcast.
Thank you. Bye.